Picture the moon floating like a pale coin over a valley that smells faintly of wet wool and wood smoke. You're standing on the sagging planks of a medieval footbridge, boots slick with dew, staring down at a river that never truly sleeps. The current murmurs against the pilings, carrying the muffled thumps of wooden paddles, the hiss of hot stones plunged into cold water, and the occasional heroic splash of someone who leaned too far over the railing with a basket of linens. Welcome to Laundry Day, or rather, Laundry Century, where an entire community, plus every trout unlucky enough to live downstream, gets drafted into the war against filth. Before we wade in, figuratively please, keep those socks dry. Hit the like button if you love history that refuses to stay in the textbook. Drop a comment telling me what mundane chore in your own life feels like it might need an army. Then, dim the lights, wrap yourself in whatever smells vaguely of lavender instead of last week's lunch, and let's float downstream together. First, erase the image of a private washing machine humming politely in a tiled nook. There was no small load button. In most medieval towns, washing clothes meant invading the landscape itself. Rivers were the laundromats, the spin cycles, and the neighborhood gossip columns all rolled into one watery ribbon. If you could hear this place at dawn, you'd catch a rhythm. Slap swish, laugh, curse, slap again. Wool skirts hiked up, sleeves rolled, everyone half-soaked before breakfast. The biggest surprise? It wasn't always the women doing the sudsy waltz. Fullers, those burly guys beating new cloth into submission, were basically the power lifters of the textile world, and they monopolized entire stretches of riverbank. Imagine being cloth in the Middle Ages. You start as itchy sheep hair or a bale of flax. You're spun, woven, maybe dyed a shifty shade of "hope this doesn't turn brown in the rain," and then you're absolutely pummeled. Fulling was essential. It tightened fibers, shrank fabric to a wearable density, and scrubbed away oils left from spinning. To accomplish that, fullers soaked yards of cloth in huge vats of hot river water mixed with fuller's earth, a soft clay, or, wait for it, stale urine. Yes, ancient ammonia, free, potent, politely donated by every household chamber pot. The phrase, "don't waste a drop," took on a pungent new meaning. Picture vats like oversized cauldrons squatting on stone hearths beside the water. Fire crackles beneath, steam snakes upward. Teams of men tramp cloth underfoot inside those vats, a stomping choreography that looks less like a spa treatment and more like grapes being crushed by ogres. The river drags away wastewater while fresh buckets are hauled up the bank by apprentices whose backs will hate them by 30. The operation is loud, heated, and smells like an outhouse got into an argument with a wet dog. But hey, fashion hurts. Slide down river a bit, away from the fuller's thunder, and you reach the washerwomen's territory. Picture wooden kneeling boards perched over shallows, each stained 100 shades of moss. Women kneel, skirts tucked, arms swinging wooden bats called beetles. They lay garments across smooth stones and smack them in steady cadence, forcing water and suds through the cloth. It's cardio meets percussion ensemble. Soap? If you were well off, maybe imported Castile soap, an olive oil luxury. Most folk made do with lye brewed from fireplace ash, goose fat, and herbs that smelled nicer than lye and goose fat. Remember, detergent ads with prancing chemists are 500 years in the future. Medieval bubbles were as caustic as family gossip. Speaking of gossip, Riverside Laundry doubled as the village news feed. Every rumor soaked downstream. Whose baby suddenly has Uncle Robert's nose? Which miller's flour is 2 scoops shy? Who last saw the Reeve staggering home with ale foam in his beard? Smack the shirt, spill the tea. A bystander could track scandals by the volume of paddle wax. Louder when someone's furious, quieter when secrets pass in hushes. Now time travel back another hour to the dark just before dawn, when laundry day actually began. Fires had to be stoked from last night's embers because water needed heating. Picture a teenage apprentice shuffling into the yard, eyes gummy, hauling iron kettles to the riverbank. He fills them, sloshes back toward the cookhouse, sets them over flames, and prays the wood is dry so the Lord's linens will boil before next Christmas. In elite households, linens were boiled white as possible. Status wasn't measured only in land, but in how blindly your sheets reflected sunlight. A dazzling tablecloth at feast time announced, "My laundry staff probably own better knives than you." While the kettles heat, someone else sorts. There are no color-fast dyes here. That bright green tunic? It'll bleed faster than an overripe berry. Whites and pales in one heap, darks in another. New scarlets in a bucket by themselves, lest they assassinate everything else. Lace collars, if you're French and fancy, get a gentle soak in a wooden tub lined with linen. And heaven help the maid who mixes up the Lord's embroidered handkerchief with the groom's saddlecloth. She'll be scrubbing latrine rags next week. Let's talk numbers. A single respectable manor might own 200 linen items, shirts, chemises, napkins, pillowcases, plus dozens of wool garments. Washing rotated in monstrous cycles. By the time the 7th tub of week-old linens was drying on hedges, the first batch was already begging for another dunk. That's why folks needed a whole river. The sheer volume of rinse water was mind-boggling. Drying was its own logistical ballet. Picture sheets pegged onto hedgerows, tunics slung over willow branches, stockings dangling from rope lines like pale sausages. Sunlight bleached, wind flapped, but too much flap and your lord's drawers might end up downstream, sparking an awkward retrieval mission. To thwart that, clever washers threaded clothes through slits in willow wands or weighed them with river stones at the hem. The sight of an entire riverbank festooned with laundry looked like a crusader's camp surrendered to ghosts. Now, you might wonder, what about winter? Rivers freeze, fingers numb, clothes refuse to dry. Answer, you still washed, just slower and closer to indoor hearths. Sheets boiled in cauldrons inside drafty laundries, and rinse water was hauled in barrels from whatever trickle hadn't iced over. Frozen garments were hung near the great hall's fires, turning stiff as boards before thawing into damp silhouettes that smelled of smoke, salt, and wet sheep. Picture nights feasting while shirt ghosts drip beside the rafters. That medieval ambiance candle companies never replicate. We can't skip the economics. Laundry, humble as it sounds, was a money engine. Fullers formed guilds, paid taxes, and fought over river rights like they were gold veins. In London, the fuller's ditch channeled wastewater away from residential streets, at least in theory. In practice, it stank so fiercely that lawmakers fined anyone dumping off schedule. Rural lords charged washerwomen rent for riverbank pitches, plus a slice of any coin they earned from neighbors. If you were too poor to hire help, you trekked to the common ford and scrubbed alongside servants. Class lines blurred by mud and misery. Health? Let's just say dermatology hadn't been invented. Constant lye exposure cracked skin till it bled. Cold water numbed joints into permanent ache. Respiratory infections flourished in steam-filled huts. But still, people queued for the privilege, because clean cloth meant fewer lice, less disease, and social respect. No one wanted to sit beside a tunic that could walk on its own. Step closer to the washerwomen's circle and watch their technique. Dip garment, wring, whip against stone. Flip, beat, rinse again. Suds swirl away, tiny eddies carrying flecks of dirt and maybe a lost button or two. Someone hums a psalm. Another counters with a tavern ditty riskily body. Overhead, ravens perch, eyeing shiny brooch pins left on the riverbank. A goose honks its disapproval as linen flaps invade its grazing patch. Life, laundry, livestock, everything negotiates river real estate. Not all washing was public. Monasteries ran industrial-sized laundries behind cloistered walls. Novices rose before lauds, hauling cassocks to stone-lined cleansing pools. Silence vows meant they scrubbed in quiet, but the splash of fabric echoed under vaulted ceilings like rainfall in a cave. Monastic records list soap expenses nearly as high as wine, proof that even holy men dreaded mildew. Then there's urban laundry, tougher still. City rivers reeked of tanners' pits, butcher offal, and the ghost of last night's chamber pot dump. Some washerwomen carted water from cleaner, upstream sources, charging rich households extra for sweet water washes. Enterprising souls built floating washboats, barges decked with benches, washboards, and curtained stalls. They anchored midstream where currents stayed relatively fresh. Picture a line of bobbing laundromats, each rocking gently as women scrubbed while gulls swooped overhead, hoping someone would toss bread crusts. Let's walk through a single garment's journey. Say you're Lady Isabel's favorite linen chemise. Monday, you're soaked in lye, kneaded like dough. Tuesday, rinsed in 3 changes of river water, beaten, then boiled with rosemary to mask odors. Wednesday, stretched on a frame, sun-bleached until blinding white. Thursday, sprinkled with rosewater, ironed under a slug-shaped slug iron heated in coals. Friday, folded into the wardrobe, smelling faintly of herbs and smoke. Saturday, Lady Isabel spills saffron sauce at supper, and you're back at square one. Imagine having a workload where success lasts exactly one feast. Did medieval people ever not do laundry? Yes, when plague struck. Outbreaks shuttered communal work. Riversides fell silent except for the priest's bell tolling. Ironically, lack of washing worsened hygiene, compounding disease spread. A grim reminder that even tedium can be life-saving. Technology crept forward. By the late Middle Ages, some towns installed public washhouses, stone sheds overhanging streams with slatted floors letting water pass through. Inside, fires heated cauldrons. Outside, awnings sheltered rinsing bays. They looked like sauna bars for clothing. Municipal ordinances dictated opening hours, noise limits, and fines for improper use, a euphemism for the occasional moonlit tryst amid drying sheets. Let's pan out at dusk. The last garments are wrung and draped. Embers fade. River carries suds toward distant mills. Washerwomen crack knuckles raw from lye. Fullers roll aching shoulders. Apprentices debate who fetches ale. The valley exhales a damp cotton scent. Tomorrow the cycle repeats, because dirt never sleeps and fashion never forgives. Take a moment to feel the riverside chill, the grit between finger joints, the satisfaction of seeing white linen glow under stars. You, dear listener, have survived medieval laundry day without frostbite, or at least without real frostbite. Not bad for an evening's storytelling. Step off the sleepy bridge and follow the riverbank east, where dawn has already cracked the sky open like an eggshell and poured gold into the water. The air is brisk. Your breath feathers out, mingling with wood smoke that drifts from squat stone cottages. Listen. Somewhere behind a hedgerow, a cock crows late, scandalized by how much work has begun before he even cleared his throat. You slog through trampled grass, still slick with yesterday's rinse water, until you glimpse the first cauldron fire of the morning. Flames spit through gaps in a ring of river stones, licking an iron belly so wide a grown man could sit inside cross-legged if the contents weren't already boiling. A girl of maybe 12 tends the blaze, poking gaps for air with a hazel switch. Her cheeks are freckled with soot, her hair smells of ash. She looks up long enough to give you that conspiratorial grin all apprentices wear, equal parts exhaustion and mischievous pride, then goes back to work, because the cauldron must stay angry or the Lord's tablecloths will rebel at lunch. Overhead, rooks wheel and argue, jostling for the best view of rising steam. To them, laundry day means free scraps, a dropped crust, a fish belly slung away when somebody's sleeve drags too low. If you've never heard a rook cackle over lavender-skinned fish guts, consider yourself unsullied. It's a sound halfway between a laugh and a cough, as if the bird itself is gossiping about your hygiene. But we didn't trek here just to birdwatch. Duck under a sagging willow branch and you'll find the soap boilers, an elite subculture within river society, armed with ladles as big as oars and opinions even bigger. They're brewing lye soap, a witchy concoction that could eat the rust off a horseshoe if you let it sit. The recipe is older than any charter on the manor rolls. Scoop a bucket of hardwood ash from last night's hearth, sift it through a basket until nothing but gray powder remains. Then pour water through the heap, slow, steady, catching the liquid that trickles out the bottom. That caustic tea is lye. Add goose grease or tallow scraped from a winter hog kill, simmer until it thickens like porridge, and you have soap strong enough to scare dirt right out of its hiding places. You edge closer, and the smell hits. Sharp, mineral, almost electric, like lightning just kissed wet clay. One boiler, a stout woman named Marjorie with arms the color of good oak, lifts her ladle and lets pale ribbons of liquid soap coil back into the pot. Every ribbon means another sleeve saved, another penny earned. Soap is currency, and Marjorie guards her pot like a dragon guards gold. Rumor has it a rival washerwoman once tried to water down Marjorie's batch to undercut prices. They found that woman's washboard floating downstream the next morning, split in two neat as firewood. Coincidence, of course. Coincidence with teeth marks. Follow the river a few bends more and you run into territory patrolled by the Dye Guild. They're early today. Dye work usually waits for hearth time, when vats can be kept hot indoors. But a sudden order for bishop's vestments arrived last night, and purple cloth waits for no one. Dyeing is a jealous craft, full of secrets and stains that never forget. Apprentices scour the shallows, gathering stones to weight fabric beneath the surface so color permeates every fiber. You can tell who's new by whose hands are already lavender to the wrist. The veterans wear waxed leather gauntlets, hardened and cracked like old horn, proof they've learned color bites skin like winter frost. The guildmaster, Master Wulfstan, stands ankle-deep in water, his beard trailing silver threads that almost match the cloth. He's murmuring to himself, counting heartbeats, perhaps, because wooed pigment demands precise timing. Too long and your royal purple ends up more bruise blue, which bishops consider spiritually unsettling. When the moment's right, he hoists the weighted fabric, purple dripping like wine. The river catches the excess and swirls it downstream in iridescent ripples. Somewhere a trout flashes through the purple plume, emerges looking vaguely puzzled, then vanishes under a bank. Even fish wear the season's shades if they loiter in the wrong current. It's mid-morning now. Sunlight pries apart river mist and reveals an army of linens spread on the bleaching fields, flat meadow grasses clipped short by sheep months ago. Sheets lie taut on pegged frames, shirts pinned at the corners like butterflies in a scholar's cabinet. Children dash between rows, flapping turkey feathers to chase off crows, tempted by laces and loose buttons. You'd think the fields were snow-dusted, but that brilliant white is solely from cloth and ambition. Every merchant riding past can read the manor's prosperity in those blinding squares. Bleaching isn't just about bragging rights, it's chemistry, though they wouldn't call it that. Washers sprinkle each sheet with a soupy mix of lye and sour milk, let the sun bake it dry, then rinse and repeat until yellow fades to moon pale. If you kneel and sniff, you'll catch whiffs of dairy tang mingled with grass, a weird summer picnic for bacteria that gradually wave a white flag and die. Let's detour to the margins of this gleaming parade, where servants handle garments unfit for public airing, blood-specked gambesons, manure-spattered hose, the mysterious bundle from the physician that smells like leeches and secrets. They soak these horrors in a wooden trough filled with horse urine because ammonia cut stains where soap quails. The trough bubbles faintly when sunbeams hit, alchemy in slow motion. No one but dedicated scullions comes here. Even rooks avoid the fumes. And yet, here's a paradox. Because scullions toil in the worst vapors, they learn the keenest tricks. Want to remove wine blotches? They'll tell you boiled buckthorn berries do the trick. Turn the stain green first, then rinse till colorless. Need to revive black velvet gone dull? A bath in elderberry dye, followed by vinegar, brings the night back to life. These kids can't read, but they can resurrect fabric like necromancers in aprons. While we're admiring expertise, peek inside that timber shed up the bank. Hear the rhythmic whump? That's the beetling house, a sound stage of wooden mallets driven by a water wheel. Beetling gives linen its sheen by hammering fibers flatter than an abbot's sermon. Inside, great arms crank and drop in perfect timing, each slam echoing like distant thunder. The cloth advances across the table inch by inch, surrendering its texture to relentless persuasion. Imagine your favorite shirt receiving 1,000 love taps in a dark room until it glows. Medieval people couldn't crank up an electric iron, but they could still weaponize gravity and hydraulics until fabric obeyed. Step back outside fast before beetling robs your hearing. Across the lane, smoke spirals from low chimneys where irons heat. Medieval irons look like metal snails, hollow bellies stuffed with glowing coals, a side vent to keep oxygen feeding the embers, and a handle wrapped in cloth to spare fingers. A maid tests heat by hovering a drop of water. If it skitters and hisses, perfect. She presses lace collars between damp cloths, exhaling into creases so steam smooths faster. Another maid follows, dusting finished pieces with ground orris root, powdered violet rhizome that leaves a ghost of perfume. Later tonight, court guests will sniff the Duke's cuffs and wonder why he smells faintly of spring, even in November. Thanks swamp-grown roots and a girl with a burn scar across her thumb. No medieval tale stays tidy, so brace for conflict. The river is a stage, and the fullers, washers, dyers, tanners, and brewers are rival troops forever elbowing for spotlight and freshwater rights. Right now, trouble brews, literally, because the alewife upstream just diverted more water to cool her fermenting barrels. The current below slowed, suds linger, cloth rinses poorly. Master Wulfstan storms toward her hut, purple stains flapping on his boots, shouting that if his bishop's vestments blotch, he'll dye her hair to match. The alewife retorts that thirsty laborers need ale more than prelates need prettier robes. Their argument draws a crowd, washerwomen with soap-red knuckles, fullers reeking of ammonia, and children perched on fence posts like courtroom spectators. Finally, the reeve, village law in muddy shoes, finds them both a penny for disrupting work, and orders sluice gates adjusted to share the flow. Justice in a handful of coin, river resumes its course, and everyone goes back to scrubbing, muttering new gossip about who flinched first. By noon, the sun is stout overhead, burning off mist and energy alike. Workers break for pottage ladled from cauldrons, barley thick with leeks, carrots, and crumbly cheese rind. They eat on overturned baskets, backs pressed to willow trunks. Some soak cracked hands in cold river water. Soap cuts sting like betrayal. A traveling fiddler appears, trading a tune for a bowl. He sings a cheeky verse about a laundress who fell for a weaver, their trysts measured in spun yarn and damp sheets. Laughter ripples louder than the river, and for 5 minutes nobody thinks about stains. Refueled, they return to labor. Afternoon tasks pivot indoors, mending tears where paddles plucked threads loose, darning heels in hose, resewing toggles lost in rinse holes. The tailoring shed smells of beeswax and new wool. Sunlight darts through knotholes, making needle points glint. Menders gossip in half sentences, tongues clasped behind rows of pins, about a new edict rumored from the king, sumptuary laws limiting cloth of gold to nobles. That decree would strangle dye orders but swell cheap linen demand. Economics toggles on a royal whim, and humble washers read political currents like weather. Toward evening, wind shifts. Clouds bruise purple. No bishop requested this hue, and thunder mutters behind distant hills. Everyone knows the river can swell from kitten to lion in one storm. Laundresses scramble, unpegging linens, folding faster than you'd think fingers could fly. Children gather stakes, apprentices dump cauldrons, sending last waves of gray water chasing each other down shore. Fullers haul their dripping bolts onto wagons, covering them with oilcloth. You help a boy untangle a sheet snagged on blackberry thorns. In gratitude, he hands you a wooden clothes peg carved into a smiling fox. Keep it, souvenir of panic. First drops fall fat as marbles, pocking dust into mud. Within breaths, the sky opens. Rain hammers river and rooftops alike, drumming louder than beetle mills. Some workers cluster under awnings, others slog toward home, garments slung over shoulders like slain dragons. But a few linger. Marjorie, the soap boiler, sets out wooden troughs to catch rainwater, soft water, perfect for next week's delicate wool rinse. She mutters thanks to Saint Hunna, patron of laundresses, and sketches a hurried cross in the air. Lightning veins the sky, illuminating the river swollen with shale-brown surge. You wonder how many dyes, soaps, and secrets are now mixing in that chaos, rushing toward towns downstream that will wake tomorrow wondering why the fish smell faintly of lavender and sheep fat. Medieval ecology in action. Every craft upstream writes its story into the water, and the river carries those sentences across counties. Night falls as abruptly as the storm began. Clouds move on, a slice of moon slides through.
fires relight one by one, reflecting on puddles like tiny orange moons. Exhausted workers crowd the alewife's hut. They might quarrel by daylight, but nothing unites like jug-brewed ale after a soaking. Inside, clothes steam on racks near the hearth. People toast to surviving another wash day, joke that even Judgment Day will be postponed until the linens are rinsed.
You step back into the hush outside. The river has settled to a throaty gurgle, dragging broken sticks and one lonely sock caught on a reed. Fireflies blink under alder leaves, echoing distant hearth embers. Somewhere, a scullion snores in a pile of damp sacks, dreaming of a world where laundry folds itself. Above, the stars return, indifferent pinpricks scribbled across velvet. What lessons cling to you like wet wool tonight? Maybe that civilization, in all its pageants and papal bulls, still depends on somebody's cracked hands scrubbing away yesterday's grime. That rivers are both laundromats and ledgers, recording every human vanity in silt and color. And that soap, humble, stinging, foul-smelling soap, is a quiet revolutionary, giving people the confidence to sit one seat closer at the feast, to shake hands without embarrassment, to dream of cloth so white it might blind next season's doubts. The fires will burn low soon, and the valley will slip into a damp silence broken only by owls asking midnight questions. But dirt is already plotting its comeback. Hens will roost in clean straw and smear it by dawn. Children will fall in puddles, nobles will spill wine. The river knows its draft notice will arrive again. Slip out of the alewife's smoky hut and feel the night breathe on your damp clothes. Everything smells of rain-slaked earth and overboiled wort. The moon, a chipped silver coin, rides high enough to inspect the wreckage daylight left behind. You angle upstream and discover the riverside after-party most travelers never see. Torches stuck in the mud like fiery cattails. Barrels rolled into a sloppy horseshoe. Washerfolk perched on them, swinging bare feet inches above swirling water. They're passing a clay jug of something called soap maker's courage, basically leftover lye cut with cider and honey. One swig scorches your throat, another polishes worries off your bones. Laughter ricochets between alder trunks. Even the frogs pause to listen, startled by the volume of human survival. But the joking stops when old Hob, the night watchman, limps into the torchlight, clanging his handbell. He's little more than coat, beard, and suspicion, yet everyone hushes. Hob points his bell at the river, mutters that a bleached sheet just drifted by with a knife hole dead center, a lord's monogram still visible in moonlight. Theft, maybe worse. No manor crest should be bobbing downstream unattended. The revelers exchange loaded looks. Suddenly every barrel seat feels guilty. Laundry thieves are the plague of river economies. Cloth costs more than most annual rents. Steal enough and you can bankroll a pilgrimage, bribe a bishop, or vanish across the sea. Lose enough and you might hang beside the town gate, shirt stuffed in your mouth as cautionary decor. The crowd disperses in tense pairs toward cottages and lean-tos. You follow Clara, Marjorie's soap apprentice, as she shoulders a willow basket and heads for the bleaching fields to check her master's inventory. Mist snakes along ground level. Sheets glow faintly, spectral sails anchored to grass. She counts out loud, 41, 42, until her voice falters at 47. One is missing, the sheet that earned the purpled stab in Hobbs' report. Clara kneels, palm on damp earth, and whispers a mild oath at St. Hannah. She's liable if Marjorie's client doesn't get his linen back. Apprentice life means paying for mistakes with coin you don't have or years you can't spare. Tracks lead away. 2 parallel furrows, as though someone dragged cloth while backing toward the scrub line. You and Clara follow by moonlight. A plucked button gleams like a breadcrumb. A few yards farther, a thread snagged on bramble waves the culprit's direction with sarcastic enthusiasm. The trail ends at the tanner's by-ditch, black with runoff. Tanners work late. They trade daylight for stink stealth, so somebody probably saw something. Clara knocks on a warped door while you breathe shallow to outwit the stench of hides steeping in dog dung and urine. Baldric the tanner answers, eyes red from smoke or secrets. He claims ignorance until Clara mentions the reeve, fines, maybe a shutdown of hide deliveries. Suddenly, his memory improves. He saw 2 silhouettes earlier, one short, one stout, wrestling cloth into a wicker cart hitched behind a donkey. They rattled south toward the old mill. The old mill, abandoned since last spring's flood, now serves as flea market for contraband. Tools without owners, chickens without tags, and yes, linens stripped of crests so new buyers can pretend they never belonged to lords. Clara exhales warily. Retrieving a stolen sheet from that den means bargaining with river wolves who know every bylaw's gray edges. Before you trek downslope, Baldric offers a curious parting gift, a pouch of oak gall dust. Boil it with water, he mutters. Brush it on the brown spots left when a thief drags cloth through tannery mud. We'll blanch 'em right out. Even criminals fear stains. They transform loot into telltale evidence. You pocket the dust, grateful for alchemy wrapped in leather. You and Clara set off along the towpath, torch crackling protests against fresh drizzle. The river to your left keeps confidences under sliding fog. On your right, hedgerows erupt with midnight rustlings, hares maybe, or footpads who earn their supper by redistributing property. Clara walks fast, wood-soled pattens clacking like castanets, nerves making percussion. She talks to steady herself, telling you about the underground linen economy. It starts benign. A washer misses market day. Her unsold cloth stored too close to the hearth. Smoke yellows it. Rather than confess, she sells at discount to a peddler who knows a dyer willing to dip the fabric woad blue. Once color cloaks the mistake, no one asks where it came from. Soon whole networks bloom. Cutters who snip off crests, needlewives who stitch new borders, clerks who invent provenance papers. The church tries to police it, fines double every Lent, but demand grows with vanity. Even flagellant monks want crisp tunics before whipping themselves through town. Hypocrisy deserves a tidy stage. Lightning flickers distant. Thunder rolls like cloth beaters. You spot the mill silhouette, stone tower leaning left, water wheel skeletal. A lantern glows in the doorway, backlighting 2 figures gnawing cheese while bargaining. You kill the torch, moon will suffice. Clara ties her hair back, squares shoulders. Inside, the mill's floorboards creak under damp weight. Piles of stolen textiles sorted by color. Ratty banners from last month's joust drape rafters, appropriated as dust covers. The sheet lies center, unmistakable, white as an alb, except the knife hole, which someone has already basted closed with black thread. The thieves are brothers, Tib and Oswin, infamous for robbing siege camps years ago. They squint when Clara steps forward, surprise punctured by recognition. Apparently, Tib owes Marjorie 3 pennies for soap credit. Clara leverages that debt. Returned a sheet tonight, debt forgiven. Tib laughs, gesturing at a merchant behind them, a round man with a city accent counting coins. he'll pay thrice that for pure linen. Business crushes obligation. Here, medieval laundry politics turn gladiatorial. Clara produces the oak gall pouch and tosses it under Tib's nose. She warns that tanners mark stolen cloth with invisible ink. Only honest washers possess antidote. The sheet he's selling is cursed. Wash it once and hidden sigils appear, branding the buyer a felon. She offers solution. Hand it back, she'll cleanse it properly. The bluff is brilliant theater. Tib hesitates. The merchant's eyes widen. He knows sheriffs hang fences. Oswin curses, shoves the sheet at Clara, demands the counter-curse immediately. She gives him river water, tells him to soak his hands to remove lingering sigils. They dunk eagerly. You count to 5 before their skin begins smarting from leftover lye residue in the water bucket. Poetic justice. You two depart with the linen and sprint until the mill's shouts fade. Dawn blushes as you reach the bleaching fields, sheet intact. Clara spreads it over grass. Dew beads across the weave like new constellations, washing away grime. She mends the knife hole with white thread so fine it vanishes unless moonlight tattles. By breakfast, Marjorie will never know danger brewed overnight. Clara thanks you and presses the fox peg back into your palm. For luck, she winks. You'll need it when the plague carts roll. Wait, plague? Yes, rumor travels faster than river currents. The prior at St. Apollonia's Abbey sent a messenger yesterday. 2 monks broke out in buboes after tending pilgrims. If plague seeps into laundry territory, everything changes. Cloth holds death. Fleas ride folds. Washerfolk become frontline physicians armed with cauldrons instead of scalpels. You recall spring 5 years ago when a different fever swept the Shire. Marjorie doubled soap causticity. Washers boiled garments twice. Dyers added vinegar to vats, hoping acidity scared microbes. Some survived, some didn't, but the river kept rolling. After a catnap on hay, you tag along to the Abbey to retrieve plague-soaked robes for deep scouring. It's uphill through barley swaying like candle flames. Every passerby covers mouth with kerchief. Fear's new fragrance is cloves and vinegar steeped in wine. At the gate, a lay brother deposits burlap sacks onto a handcart, then retreats behind bolted doors, shouting prayers for your souls. Clara grimaces, holy charity indeed, and splashes vinegar on the sacks before opening. Robes inside are stiff with dried sweat, blood, maybe tears. She knows the protocol. Straight to boil and lie, then cordial bonfire for anything beyond redemption. Back at the riverbank, they string a quarantine line. Plague robes on one side, normal wash on the other. Fires roar hotter. Marjorie tosses juniper branches to perfume air and, superstitiously, drive out demons. Fullers drench themselves in lavender-steeped water because somebody's grandmother said fleas hate purple flowers. Even gossip mutates. Every cough is suspect. Each stain examined like a death warrant. Yet commerce can't stop. A caravan arrives from the next shire. Merchants headed to Candlemas Fair, hauling bolts of Flemish wool that picked up horse manure en route. They needed cleaned before city gates open. Marjorie haggles hazard pay, plague surcharge she calls it, 1 extra groat per bolt. The merchants balk until she lifts a monk's robe with tongs, pus-flecked, and asks whether they fancy their wool sharing a cauldron with that unless she builds another kettle. Surcharge accepted with trembling signatures. New cauldron forged from old horseshoes and barrel hoops appears by sunset. Blacksmiths work miracles when paid up front. Clara operates it like a war engine, timing batches, skimming scum. You note her quick arithmetic. How much soap to how many gallons, factoring fabric weight and impurity type. No parchment needed. The river writes equations across her memory. Days blur into a rhythm of dread and determination. Plague doesn't explode, thank whatever saint tends laundries, but rumors keep everyone edgy. Measures tighten. Rinse water must flow through reed filters. Ashes are sifted twice. Finished cloth stored in cedar-lined chests. Even the thieves adapt. Tib and Oswin start peddling saint-blessed lavender posies, essentially weeds stuffed into linen scraps, marketing them as plague talismans. Superstition sells better than soap. 1 week in, you witness an innovation. Wulfstan the dyer collaborates with Baldric to produce alum-mordanted fabrics dyed in madder red, then soaked in vinegar. He swears the combination repels contagion. Is it science? Accident? Doesn't matter. City merchants pre-order by the bolt, driving price beyond saffron. Linen once destined for tablecloths now becomes plague-proof veils. The economy of fear rewrites fashion overnight. Amid crisis, power pivots. The Reeve, overwhelmed, delegates sanitation authority to the Washer Guild. Marjorie leads patrols testing household wash water for adequate heat. Stick in a feather. If the quill curls, pot is hot enough. Non-compliance earns fines funneled into an orphan bread fund. Yes, plague orphans multiply before plague itself arrives, because parents send children away just in case. Laundry yards double as daycare. Kids stomp linens with bare feet, agitating fibers while giggling. Work disguised as play. One twilight, a bard wanders in, lute thrumming a tune about Saint Veronica's veil, the cloth that captured Christ's face. He weaves allegory. Clean linen immortalizes holiness, dirty linen forgets it. People pause mid-scrub, considering their spiritual laundry. Donations to the village church spike next morning. The bard leaves with a pouch heavy enough to buy new strings and moral ambiguity. Soon the first plague wagon rattles in after all. A distant village failed containment. 2 bodies wrapped in linen rest atop hay, destined for consecrated ground. Washers stand silent as priests bless them, then ignite a pyre downstream. The flames dye the night orange. Sparks whirl like souls ascending. Clara wipes her eyes, but returns to the cauldron. The living still need shirts. Not all tragedies burn so clean. One morning, old Hob is absent from his patrol. They find him fevered in a hut, clutching his bell like a talisman. Washerwomen discuss whether lye steam might cleanse his blankets on the bed. They attempt it, boiling water beside him so vapors rise through fabric. He mutters thanks, sinks into sleep, and by sunrise the fever has broken. Word spreads, boil air, save lives. Soon cauldrons bubble outside cottages, steam pouring through windows. Nights glow like alchemist labs, streets scented with rosemary and desperation. Maybe it works. Maybe luck disguised as vapor. Summer slides toward Michaelfas. River levels drop. Water rights become war again. But an unlikely alliance has formed. Washers, dyers, fullers, even Tib and Oswin safeguard one shared need: clean water. They petition the Lord for upstream weir repairs to keep flow consistent. He balks until guilds threaten laundry strike. No fresh linens for castle banquets. Nobles fear foul reputations more than revolt. Repairs begin promptly. For once, soap outranks sword. Let's pause on a high bank at dusk and survey what the river has become, a liquid biography of crisis and craft. Purple dye eddies with ashes of plague robes. Soap bubbles collide with fallen apple blossoms. Children's reed toys drift beside lost coins. Somewhere in that swirl, your reflection floats, changed. You started as an observer. Now ink of experience stains your sleeves. And still, questions remain unanswered. Who first discovered that stale urine fixed dye better than vinegar? How did clandestine night washers launder outlawed books wrapped in cloth, smuggling ideas as linens? When winter frost seals the river, what replaces water in the laundry economy? Snow baths, fermented whey, or clever patience? The first frost sneaks in overnight like a courteous burglar, quiet, deliberate, and slightly pleased with itself. At dawn, every blade of grass along the embankment wears a jeweled edge. Every half-forgotten bucket brims with thin ice that fractures the moment you tap it with a knuckle. You catch your breath. The river that once roared with midsummer gossip now exhales chilled mist in long, thoughtful sentences. Water still moves, just slower, thicker, as if deliberating each bend. And for the washerfolk who count their fortunes in suds and current, that hesitation is a trumpet blast announcing a brand new campaign: Winter Laundry Logistics. The day's first cauldron coughs to life beside Marjorie's soap shed. She's already up, hood slung low, breath racing out in white ribbons while she feeds elm logs into the iron maw. Clara appears seconds later, fingers purpled from wringing sheets at dawn, fox peg tucked behind her ear like a quill. You join them, stamping feet to persuade blood to circulate. Above the cauldron hangs a plank sign freshly painted overnight: Steam stronger than snow. Marketing or manifesto, either way it buoys morale. Winter rewrites every rule. Water drawn at sunrise is bone cold, too frigid for lie to obey unless coaxed with extra ash and double boils. Hands chap, linen threads shrink, and any cloth left too long on a line snaps like old parchment. Plus, there's the river. Toward mid-season, it will crust over, silencing the washer's beating paddles. Folk upstream insist this only happens in the harshest years, but the guild prepares as if ice is certain, because laundry isn't a hobby, it's survival disguised as chores. Marjorie unveils her contingency map scratched into a flour-dusted tabletop. 3 winter alternatives radiate from a crude sketch of the river. Snow baths, packing garments in fresh powder, then tamping and shaking until the snow absorbs grime, supposedly leaving fabric mountain clean. It works best on wool, but folklore swears even linen brightens like dawn. Whey washes. Utilize surplus goat milk whey from the cheesemakers. The acidity softens fibers and, when heated gently, mimics a mild soap. Cellar steaming. Leveraging breweries' constant warmth and humidity to steam garments on racks above fermenting vats. Brewer gets free filters for airborne yeast, washer gets heat. Each method carries complications. Snow is plentiful only during storms. Whey spoils within hours, and brewers guard cellars like dragons hoard hops. Nevertheless, the guild votes yes to all 3, because in winter you hedge bets like a gambler with icy dice. Your first assignment: lead a team on a snow hunt. At midday, the sun appears but lacks conviction. Still, hills north of town remain frosted white. You load a handcart with empty linen sacks, 2 shovels, and a brave orphan nicknamed Pintle who swears snow is his second home. The trek up takes an hour, feet sliding on frozen ruts. Along the way, Pintle shares vital intel: where foxes nest, avoid yellow snow, how wind direction shapes drifts, and a rumor that knights practicing jousts nearby trample perfect powder into useless slush. "Snow's like bread," he explains, "best if untouched till you slice it." You crest a ridge to find pristine drifts sparkling beneath thin sunlight. Pintle dives in, laughing, while you and the others shovel fresh powder into sacks. Must be new fallen, not yet crusted. Each sack weighs almost nothing, but holds cleaning potential worth several pennies. On the return, you chat logistics. How to store snow indoors without melting. Clara suggested lining a root cellar with straw and storing packed snow in wooden bins. Pintle claims his aunt did this once and still had ice in high summer. That's either a miracle or a child's exaggeration, but hope, like soap bubbles, rises effortlessly.
Back at the yard, trials begin. A sooty wool cloak from the Reeves deputy becomes test subject 1. Clara buries it in a tub of powder, stomps gently with her feet, wrapped in spare linen to prevent frostbite, then shakes the cloak out over a sled. Dirt specks cling to snow crystals. The fabric emerges cleaner, though damp. Quick whip in the wind, finish by the fire, and, astonishingly, the cloak looks fresher than after a river wash. Everyone applauds, except Marjorie, who eyes the time. Snow baths double labor minutes. Efficiency versus cleanliness, eternal duel continues. Evening brings way. Cheesemaker Aldith arrives rolling a barrel that sloshes sour-sweet vapors. She's eager to offload the byproduct. Goats keep producing whether buyers want winter cheese or not. Into a small copper kettle goes the milky liquid. Marjorie stirs, adds pinch of salt, whisper of lye, and a fist of sage for scent. When steam lifts, it smells strangely comforting, like breakfast porridge flirting with herbal remedy. Linen napkins drop into the brew, swirl, then rest. Minutes later, they rise softer, cream-colored, smelling faintly of meadow. Aldith claps. She's discovered a second revenue stream. Yet the ale cellar remains the most ambitious venture. Brewer Godfrey is notorious for guarding his barrels tighter than monks guard relics. You volunteer as envoy, partly because you've tasted his winter stout, and partly because negotiations require a neutral face. At Godfrey's timber-framed tavern, you find him hefting a cask with ease that suggests biceps sculpted by barley. He greets you wary-eyed until you present gifts. One snow-cleansed cloak, one whey-washed napkin, proof that laundry alchemy is profitable. Godfrey sniffs them, grunts approval, but counters with demands. For every steaming session, washers must skim yeast foam, threatening to overflow vats. Messy job his apprentices loathe. Deal struck. Cloth for foam, cleanliness for beer. Implementation night arrives. You descend stone steps into the cellar where lanterns glow amber through vapor. Racks are erected across beams. Linens lie draped like ghosts, sunbathing by moonlight. Heat from fermentation rises, condenses, drips back, natural rinse cycle. Washerfolk move silently, timing flips between foam skimmings. The smell is divine. Bread, honey, and a mischievous tang of alcohol. You suspect clothes might emerge tipsy if fabrics could stagger. Mid-shift excitement erupts. A barrel bung pops loose, stout gushes forth, frothing toward linens. Clara reacts first. Snatching the fox peg from her hair, she drives it into the wooden bunghole like a miniature plug. Flow stops. Godfrey, rushing in, witnesses her quick thinking and declares, from now on, any garment processed here receives a complimentary beer yeast curing. Call it the fox peg finish, said to imbue cloth with resistance to mildew. Marketing boards will swallow any catchy phrase. Winter deepens. Snow baths scale up. Cellar racks run non-stop. The river gradually muffles under ice, except for a narrow midstream channel that flickers like a silver eel. Children skate where washers once beat cloth. Old Hob, recovered, now patrols ice thickness with his bell, tapping, listening. One dawn, he spots cracks radiating like spider webs near the bleaching field cove. Beneath ice, lost linens from autumn, weighted by mud, drift lazily. Hob organizes a retrieval party using pole hooks. The scene looks like fishing, but for shirts. Each garment hauled up is cataloged, owner traced, laundering fee doubled for winter salvage. Just when you think weather is the biggest adversary, politics freeze over faster. The Lord Steward issues edict. All bleaching activities must cease until tithes on winter methods are assessed. He claims snow is the Lord's property on account of descending over his domain. The guild fumes. Marjorie drafts a protest scroll arguing snow's divine origin outranks feudal claims. But scrolls march slower than coins. Clara proposes a loophole. If snow is his, let's wash on common land beyond the domain boundary. Thus, a nightly caravan forms, washers hauling sacks to a wind-scored plain just outside feudal reach. They work by starlight, torchlight banned to avoid stewards' patrols. Pintle sketches constellations in snow between loads, naming one Soap Ladle. Rebellion disguised as laundry continues. Meanwhile, supply lines stretch thinner, firewood scarce, lye dwindles. Baldric the Tanner suggests an alternative. Ash from burned horsetail plants mixed with aged urine yields potent alkalinity. Collection buckets appear outside taverns labeled "Spend a penny, save a shirt." Patrons oblige, some more enthusiastically than others. The resulting concoction, nicknamed Moonshine Lye, smells like sin but works wonders on grease stains. Marjorie bottles small vials, sells to traveling merchants as universal stain cure. Coins clink, crisis monetized again. With every adaptation, stories multiply. A traveling friar arrives spreading word of miracle cloth in distant kingdoms, fabric that repels water, dirt, even sin. He claims pilgrims in the Holy Land witnessed such textiles. Washerfolk laugh yet wonder. Miracles often start as rumors. Clara, ever curious, experiments. She rubs paraffin, scraped from candle stubs, onto a scrap of linen, then polishes it with hot stone. Water beads on the surface. She grins, calls it friar's folly. Yet merchants immediately place orders for waterproof hoods. Innovation born from hearsay. Then plague reality returns. A neighboring town perishes by quarter. Refuge seekers arrive with belongings tied in blankets. Guild protocol kicks in. Quarantine stations erected at the crossroads. Each bundle is opened. Texts recited from new Rules for Contagious Cloth, a handbook penned collectively over winter nights. Pages cover everything from fumigating linen with rosemary smoke to sewing red crosses on plague-cleansed sacks. You help inspect arrivals. Some cloths are beyond salvation, stiff with fluid. They go straight to fire. Refugees watch, tears reflecting flames. Washerfolk stand stoic. They've burned too many memories already to flinch. Amid sorrow, an unexpected alliance forms between washers and itinerant weavers stranded by frozen trade routes. Weavers own portable looms. Washers own raw wool salvaged from ruined garments. They combine skills, dismantle irreparable cloaks, spin feathers anew, weave narrow tapes called hope bands dyed sky blue. Refugees tie them around wrists as pledge of fresh start. Sail proceeds fund soups. The river may rest under ice, but its spirit flows through communal craft. Yet tension with thieves resurfaces. Tib and Oswin, facing snow-packed roads that hinder their fencing routes, pivot to counterfeit hope bands,
cheap rag strips dipped in blue mud sold at twice true price. When one disintegrates in soup pot, uproar ensues. Marjorie organizes Washer's Justice. They confront the brothers with evidence. Muddy fingers can't hide. Punishment, however, is creative. Tib and Oswin must haul snow for Guild all month, unpaid, before dawn, while singing whichever hymn Clara dictates. Day 1. St. Hunnah's Shuffle. Off-key wails echo across fields. By week's end, they harmonize. Their shoulders grow broader, grudges shrink. Not all narratives resolve so neatly. The steward intensifies pressure, dispatching tax collectors to audit every cauldron. During inspection, they tally wood stacks, count ladles, even measure cauldron circumference to calculate hearth duty. One tall collector sneers at the Foxpeg Finish certification, claiming yeast smells unholy. Godfrey, incensed, challenges him to drink a mug of stout steamed under the racks. Collector hesitates, but crowd eggs him on. Taxmen rarely turn down free ale. He gulps, belches approval, declares yeast scent inspiring to the marrow. Inspection ends friendlier, tariffs reduced in exchange for weekly barrels delivered to the manor. Compromise is just bribery wearing fancy socks. Frost hardens into ice, thick enough to bear wagons. Clara orchestrates the ice pound method. Linens laid across frozen river, sprinkled with sand, then beaten rhythmically by teams of children wielding willow flails. Sand scours fibers, cold shock stains. Echo booms underfoot like drum rolls. Villagers gather on banks just to listen. Some dance, claiming the rhythm keeps winter blues away. Old Hob taps his bell in sync, creating impromptu percussion ensemble. Even you join, flail rising and falling till arms ache. Under northern lights shimmering faintly, the scene feels otherworldly. Hardship transmuted into festival. But time doesn't freeze. Candlemas arrives. Ice begins subtle thinning. Guild surveys river daily, measuring cracks with barley straws. Soon water will flow again, bringing both relief and risk. Spring floods can sweep entire bleaching yards. Preparations begin. Elevate drying racks, tie barrels to trees, carve channels to divert overflow. Pintle invents miniature boats from shaved bark. He launches them on melt streams, predicting flood direction by their journey. Some adults scoff, but Marjorie maps results. Turns out the boys' boats forecast currents better than the Miller's Almanac. One gray dawn, the ice laments with a gunshot crack, a shard the size of a cart calving into channel. Water gurgles greedily. Washers cheer like miners hitting ore. Ritual dictates first water must baptize tools. They dip paddles, ladles, even foxpeg. Clara flicks droplets skyward, to stains forgiven and pages yet written. Cheers follow, backs bend to work. Spring's promise, however, carries new threat. Lords plan a grand tournament to celebrate plague's ebb. They'll need banners, capes, and fancy linens by cartload. Orders so huge they dwarf Guild's capacity. Marjorie frowns. Refusing means forfeiting favor. Accepting risks burnout. Clara proposes a daring answer. Invite rival washer guild from across the valley, historically foes, to share contract and profits. United, they can handle volume and set precedent against noble price squeezing. It's audacious. Alliances upset power. Yet River teaches cooperation. Upstream freshness ensures downstream clarity. You are dispatched as diplomat again. Footbridge over thawed river, parchment in hand, heart thumping. Rival guildmistress Agnes greets you with arms folded, skeptical. You present numbers, cloth tonnage, delivery deadlines, revenue split. She scoffs until you share winter innovations, the fox peg finish, snow baths, hope bands. Her eyes gleam calculation. Then you reveal final lure, joint branding as Twin River Laundries, securing monopoly on tournament textiles, pricing set by guilds not lords. Agnes extends hand. Deal sealed over a bowl of curdled milk turned improvised waywash demonstration. She's impressed, you're relieved. Back home, Guildhall bursts with planning. Loom rhythms, die-vat schedules, river slot allocations. Children deliver messages between camps, earning ribbons. Even Tib and Oswin volunteer as couriers. Brownie points never hurt. Tanners provide leather patches to reinforce tournament saddlecloths. Brewer adjusts cellar steaming cycles to double throughput. It's logistical ballet, and you, improbably, find yourself choreographing segments, scheduling moonlit snow baths for residual specialty pieces, coaching newcomers on ice pound technique, on shore now with sandbags. In midst of frenzy, Clara pulls you aside near the riverbank. She holds up the fox peg, now stained, edges smooth from months of service. Peg's done its duty, she says, pressing it into your palm again. Time you carved another for the next chapter. She smiles, but worry flickers. Maybe she senses exhaustion's creeping grip or foresees new storms. You promise to whittle a fresh peg tonight from willow that drank the same river. Continuity carved in wood. Night settles. Fires across twin camps flicker like constellations mirrored on Earth. Steam curls upward, joining stars. You stroll the riverside path, listening. The river, thawed, restless, opinionated, tells ancient stories in glugs and laps. You realize medieval laundry truly did take an entire river, not merely for water, but for ideas, conflicts, alliances, songs, and the countless hands and hearts beating together along its banks. Tomorrow banners will billow crimson, capes swirl gold, and nobles will preen, oblivious to everything boiled, beaten, or bartered to make their fabrics shine. That's fine. Washerfolk don't chase glory. They wear resilience like perfectly folded linen. No crease shows, but structure holds. The tournament trumpets wake you before the cock crows, shattering the last thin dream of floating soap bubbles. Their brassy call ricochets off every timber beam in town, rattling shutters, rattling nerves, rattling the bones of anyone who thought laundry would pause for chivalry. You swing out of bed already hearing the guild yard come alive. Cauldrons slamming, paddles clacking, Clara barking roll call in a voice that could starch linen at 20 paces. Today is delivery day, one, banner day, and if a single pennant arrives creased, the Lord's herald has threatened to fine the entire river. So you move, quick and quiet, through dawn's blue hush, stepping over cats still curled on windowsills. The river, newly freed of ice, glitters like spilled needles under the twilight. Mist hangs low, smelling of thawed moss, coal smoke, and distant yeast. Somewhere downstream, the rival guild's camp stirs too. You picture Agnes counting bolts of cloth like a field marshal. Twin River Laundries. The name sounded ambitious by firelight, but now it feels like a galleon you're both steering through whitewater rapids where every rock wears a crown. First checkpoint is Marjorie's inspection table. She stands there like a magistrate in a soap-splattered apron. Fox Peg 2.0 tucked behind her ear. Your handiwork, carved last night from fresh willow. She twirls it thoughtfully, inspecting each banner. Red satin for Sir Everard, boiled in whey, dried over ale vats to give it that subtle malty sheen. Emerald brocade for Lady Sabine, snow-pounded and finished with rosemary smoke. And the piece de resistance, a golden blue war flag big enough to blanket 2 oxen, commissioned by the steward himself. You run a palm over the blue field, still faintly warm from the cauldron. The fabric whispers under your fingers about faraway ports, dyed with indigo that crossed deserts on camelback, spun by weavers whose names you'll never know. Today it will ripple above a jousting tilt, cheered by hundreds who won't spare a thought for the sudsy pilgrimage that brought it here. Such is laundry, heroic backstage labor, applause muffled by curtains of steam. Cartwheels crunch gravel. Pintle, now official snow liaison turned banner porter, backs a donkey cart into position. He's grown half a head over winter, cheeks still red but eyes sharp as cloth shears. Loaded her with straw so the folds don't bruise, he brags, patting the cart. Marjorie nods, files that under good thinking, and thrusts a parchment manifest into your hand. Delivery route, item counts, signatures required. It reads like a treasure hunt devised by a bureaucrat. The caravan rattles off. 2 donkey carts, 3 apprentices on foot, and you riding shotgun with Pintle. Cobblestones funk beneath iron rims. Early risers line the street shouting wagers about which knight will unhorse which. You overhear someone marveling that the washerfolk managed such rich colors so soon after plague. Pintle winks. Word of Twin River efficiency is already loose, fluttering around gossip circles like a handkerchief in wind. At the tourney grounds, the chaos blossoms in technicolor. Tilt barriers rise, carpenters hammer grandstands, cooks roast whole pigs that pirouette over fire. Everywhere cloth, tents striped crimson and white, canopies gold as sunrise, streamers twisting from pikes. Your banners must outshine all of it. You hop down, organizing apprentices into a line, while heralds bustle up with inkpots to stamp guild seals on delivery slips. One herald stops, fingers the fabric, inhales the ale cellar finish, and raises an eyebrow. "Smells like victory," he mutters. "You'll take that." But victory, like soap scum, collects problems underneath. By midday, rumors swirl that the steward, never content, wants last-minute pageant costumes for 8 troubadours who just rode in. Delivery in 48 hours. No fabric provided, no extra coin mentioned. Classic noble math. Squeeze until the river itself bleeds cloth. You return to Guildhall to find Clara mid-argument with Agnes's envoy over exactly this demand. Clara insists the guilds present a united front, refuse until additional payment secured. Envoy counters that refusing courts royal displeasure. Marjorie listens, arms folded, fox-peg twitching like a nervous compass. Finally, she turns to you. Diplomat hat on again. Go fish silver from the steward or find fabric growing on trees. Either way, costumes appear by deadline without drowning us. Mission accepted. If only because refusing means Clara's temper might scald more linen than any cauldron. You march back to the manor, navigate corridors lined with tapestries older than the river, and request audience. The steward greets you in a hall that smells of beeswax and self-importance. He speaks slowly, as if words cost him muscle effort. Payment? Impossible. Tournament expenses ballooned. Besides, laundry guilds should feel honored. Artisans serve glory, not coin. You counter with numbers. Labor hours, dye costs, the logistics of sourcing silk so late. He waves a ringed hand. Compensate yourselves by selling ale cellar treatments to visiting merchants, he suggests, as though that solves everything. You smile politely while mentally boiling his wig in moonshine lie. On exit, you linger beside the kitchens where scullions polish silver plates. Eavesdropping reveals that the tournament's prize purse was swelled by an unexpected sponsor. Godfrey the brewer, basking in the popularity of his Fox Peg Stout, each barrel branded with a tiny wooden peg logo. Richer than ever, he's courting stewardly favor. Opportunity glints sharper than a laundry pin. That night, you corner Godfrey by his copper stills. He's exhilarated, counting coins, but also exhausted. Demand outstrips vats. You propose a trade. Laundry guilds will supply him with dozens of freshly laundered, yeast-friendly kerchiefs each week. Apparently, they boost fermentation efficiency. In exchange for Godfrey underwriting the troubadour costumes. He laughs a booming, foamy laugh, then agrees, scribbling figures on a malt-stained ledger. You sprint back triumphant. Clara reads the deal, claps you on the back hard enough to send soap flakes flying. Now comes fabrication. Troubadours require flamboyance, slashed sleeves, contrasting linings, jingling trim. Agnes's weavers work looms through the night, while washers prep dyes. Madder root for scarlet, woad for deep blue, saffron courtesy of a spice merchant debt. Pintle organizes kids to scavenge fallen peacock feathers from aviaries near the manor. Birds molt this time of year. Perfect for plume caps. You supervise dye vats, steering pigment storms that rising steam paints onto rafters. The smell is dizzying, floral, earthy, metallic. Clara hand-stitches the first jerkin, humming an old river shanty. Around 3 a.m., she passes you a cup of Godfrey's Stout for medicinal alertness. The world softens at the edges, and for a moment you think you hear the river itself murmuring encouragement through the floorboards. Or maybe that's just water sloshing in rinse tubs. Morning. Costumes done, feathers fluttering on mannequin poles. Washerfolk admire the kaleidoscope. Even Marjorie, normally allergic to frivolity, runs a finger over a satin cuff with grudging affection. Agnes arrives, sees workmanship, whistles. Rivalry tilts further toward alliance. She offers her own fox peg carved from alder as token of respect. Clara plants it beside yours on the notice board, 2 pegs crossing like swords. Delivery day again, and troubadours swoon over their outfits. Payment, via Godfrey's sealed purse, arrives promptly. Steward even musters a smile, thin as parchment, announcing future collaboration. You sense another tax brewing, but file that worry under later. The tournament begins proper. Crowds flood in, dust rises, blending with wood smoke and trumpet blasts. Twin River staff maintain a booth selling miniature hope bands and sachets of rosemary-scented lye. Tib and Oswin, now reformed marketers, shout slogans. Clean courage begins with clean cloth. Kids giggle. Nobles purchase out of curiosity, peasants out of faith. Coin flows like the river at thaw. You, however, patrol behind grandstands for cloth emergencies, torn surcoats, mud-spattered tabards, wine-stained noble sleeves. A squire races up, panicked. Lady Sabine's emerald brocade snagged on a splinter. You and Clara sprint, sewing kit ready. Surrounded by onlookers, you kneel, snip fraying threads, patch with near-invisible stitch. Sabine beams, tips a silver groat each, generous indeed. But then disaster drops like a hawk. Black clouds gather. Wind whips banners. Sudden spring storm barrels across fields. Raindrops fat as grapes splatter silk canopies, send spectators scrambling. You yank ropes, trying to save laundry booth tarps. Over at the list field, knights stumble in mud. Horses rear. Worse, the river, already swollen, growls. Within an hour, torrents race through town lanes, swallowing gutters. Guild Yard quickly becomes ankle-deep. Marjorie orders cauldrons extinguished. Apprentices haul wood above waterline. Agnes's camp across river signals with lanterns. They're evacuating dye vats uphill. A joint crisis plan scribbled weeks ago springs into action. Cross-guild chain lines ferry supplies to a hilltop barn donated by the cheesemaker. You guide a line of workers carrying wet banners rolled around poles, too precious to let mildew. Rain hammers your hood. Thunder shakes your ribcage. At the river crossing, the footbridge trembles. Hob, the bellman, stands mid-span, ringing warning rhythm, water licking boards. Pintle appears, lugging a chest of lye powder, too heavy for him alone. You wade in, each taking a handle. Bridge creaks, one plank snaps, but you're across, soaked, laughing from adrenaline. Safe in barn loft, everyone collapses among hay bales, steam rising from bodies like weary cauldrons. Clara conducts head count, missing none. She digs flask of fox peg stout, passes it along. Outside, rain drums bard style on roof. Inside, washerfolk recount near misses. That's tethered just in time. Hope Bandstock rescued by Tibbs' quick thinking. Godfrey's barrels floated like buoyant pigs. Storm abates by dawn. The river recedes grudgingly, leaving mud tattoos on every surface. But the tournament? Still on, because chivalry refuses weather as much as stains resist bleach. Grandstands require scrubbing, banners need rehoisting, and spectators will expect everything dry by midday. Twin River mobilizes. Sun is shy, so you return to ale cellar racks, this time steaming not just cloth, but entire canvas awnings. Brewer shrugs. So long as yeast thrives, the more the merrier. Knights ride again, now on slippery turf. Mud spatters competitors. Surcoats by evening look like abstract art. Yet each intermission, you and your crew whisk away the worst grime, wielding brushes made of horsetail dipped in moonshine lye. Spectators notice. A rumor spreads that cloth touched by Twin River wards off miasmas. Whether health or vanity, demand skyrockets. In this frenzy, you hardly register the steward approaching with parchment scroll bearing a wax seal shaped like a lion crouched on laundry paddle. It's a charter proposal. Formalize Twin River as royal purveyors to cloth above and below stairs. Benefits: stable orders, reduced taxes, access to imported dyes. Costs: exclusivity clause, no competing for foreign contracts without permission. Guild council convenes at twilight under a half-mended canopy. Candles sputter in damp air. Faces shine tired but determined. Debate swirls. Stability versus independence. Coin versus creative freedom. Agnes argues acceptance. Marjorie leans skeptical. Clara looks at you, brow furrowed, the diplomat again. You clear throat, recall river metaphors. When two streams merge, they gain strength, but risk losing unique songs. The charter could fund better tools, but nobles who grant favors can also pull them. Perhaps insert clause protecting experimental methods and fair pay. The council nods, negotiation amendments drafted. You volunteer to carry them. Next morning, steward reviews edits, hesitates over the innovation autonomy line. You remind him of the foxpeg finish, the hope bands, the miracle dyes that made his tournament gleam. Stifle the river and colors fade, you say. He exhales, signs. Victory, not total, but hew fast. Festival's final night glows under lanterns strung like constellations. Troubadours, resplendent in your costumes, serenade crowds with ballads praising brave laundresses who tamed storms and stains. Exaggeration? Absolutely, but ears lap it up. Pintle stands at edge of stage, eyes wide. He sees legends forming in real time, and maybe his own future beyond cart hauling. Later, washers and weavers gather by riverside for a private rite. They float tiny bark boats, like pencil scouts, each bearing a pinch of lye, a scrap of dyed thread, and a whispered wish. Boats drift, candles flicker, currents carry them toward moon's silver trail. It's quiet, except for water and soft sighs. You drop your boat last. Inside, a miniature foxpeg carved from leftover willow, wish unspoken. Midnight returns you to Guildyard. Fires low, cauldrons cold. Marjorie wipes hands on apron, surveys scene. Cloth bundles neatly stacked, new orders pinned, taxes paid for now. She turns, softens. River owes you, she says. You shrug. It's collective. She presses the second foxpeg into your palm, willow grain warm from her fingers. Tradition says when two pegs cross, a third must be carved to pass the craft forward. Pintle's silhouette flits past, humming the saint's shuffle. You think you've found the next carver. But dawn will bring fresh water, fresh stains, possibly fresh politics. Will rivalries remain friendly? Will the charter hold? Will Godfrey's yeast empire collapse under its own foam? And what of plague rumor? Clusters still flicker in distant villages. Laundry never ends. It merely changes temperature. The sun creeps over the ridge like a timid apprentice, painting the river in ribbons of tarnished gold, and you're already ankle-deep in yesterday's runoff, feeling for lost clothespins between slick stones. 6 roosters argue across the valley, but their chorus can't drown out the thrum of the new fulling wheel Clara ordered installed at dawn. Each paddle slap sends a tremor through the bank, as though the river itself has grown a heartbeat just for the guild. You rub sleep from your eyes with sudsy knuckles, and the day, no, the next chapter, starts moving before you've decided whether you're directing it or merely being towed downstream. First crisis shows up disguised as progress. The royal charter, still smelling of beeswax and fresh vanity, has inspired neighboring barons to demand equal laundry privileges. They've begun floating dyed cloth scraps downstream on tiny rafts, like carrier pigeons, each tagged with a wax seal and a plea. Wash these linens, and my steward will discuss grain deliveries. Marjorie collects the offerings in a wicker basket, examines each scrap as though it were a foreign ambassador, and frowns at the mounting diplomacy. More customers means more coin, but also more water, more wood, more ash, and more tension with the fishermen, claiming the wash suds scare away trout. Clara convenes a sunrise council under the willow by the bleach field. Dew pearls cling to linen sheets, hung like pale sails awaiting wind. Agnes is there, rival turned ally, along with Pintle, who now sports a leather apron engraved with twin fox pegs, and Godfrey the brewer, sweating stout through every pore. The agenda? Resource rationing. The solution proposed? Build upriver settling ponds to let soap scum sink before water reaches the Fisher's Cove. Simple in theory, colossal in labor. You, being the guild's unofficial navigator of impossible tasks, march a surveying crew upstream. The landscape is all spring lushness, ferns unfolding like scrolls, bluebells nodding approval, until you reach a bend where the river widens into a lazy oxbow. Perfect. You pace out embankments, scratch diagrams in mud, dream of sluice gates and sluice songs. Returning, you cross the market square where peddlers hustle relics of yesterday's tournament, splintered lances, broken spur buckles, and, bizarrely, a singed feather from one of the troubadour's hats. Smote by divine lightning, the salesman insists. A crowd clusters around Tib and Oswin's pop-up stall advertising laundry-blessed love sachets. They wave little linen pouches stuffed with lavender and rumor that wearing one guarantees a dance at midsummer. You eye their coin box, pleased, and make mental note. Maybe myth has its own currency. Back at Guildyard, construction of the new dye shed is in full swing. Twin River has outgrown its patchwork of lean-tos. Clara wants brick walls, proper chimneys, and a skylight vent so the woad fumes don't leave everyone giggling like lunatics. Apprentices haul bricks 2 at a time, chanting a cadence. Wash, rinse, build, rise. The soundtrack to industry. But not everything rises. A messenger from the hillside convent arrives, whisper pale. The plague flare you'd have dismissed as distant rumor is now a candle flickering closer. 3 sisters fevered, linens soiled beyond their infirmarian's experience. They request Twin River's water miracles and promise prayers in return. Silence falls over the yard. Everyone remembers last winter's funeral pyres, the way bells tolled until they sounded bored of grief. Of course! You pack a portable vat, medicinal lye infused with juniper ash, and Pintle volunteers to join, keen to see the world beyond donkey carts. The path to the convent climbs through cedar woods ripe with birdsong that feels almost disrespectful given your mission. At the gate, a nun with eyes like quenched coals ushers you into a cloister courtyard where sheets flutter on lines strung between stone arches, except these sheets are stained the color of rust and despair. Work begins. You boil water in copper kettles borrowed from the convent kitchen, stirring until steam ghost dances above the flagstones. Pintle chops firewood in metronome rhythm, humility etched across his brow. Sisters move silently around you, sprinkling rosemary on coals, murmuring psalms that braid with the crackle of flames. You show them how to beat cloth against washboards, how to let juniper lather seep into seams where contagion likes to sleep. Hours blur into a swirl of scalding water and whispered amen. By dusk, linens hang clean, though scarred. At least the plague will find fewer hiding places tonight. The abbess gifts you a relic, a tiny glass vial containing what she claims is rainwater caught on the feast of a laundry saint, Saint Hannah, patroness of washerwomen. Whether miracle or myth, it's pretty, refracting sunset like captive dawn. You tuck it in your satchel, feeling somehow heavier and lighter at once. As you and Pintle descend the cedar trail, thunder rolls far off. Storms again? No, this rumble pulses steady. Reaching the riverbank, you discover workers installing the settling ponds. Rows of timber stakes hammered into gravel, sod rolled behind to form berms. Clara directs traffic atop an upturned barrel, voice hoarse but determined. Agnes outlines cloth on the grass, planning die batch throughput like a battlefield general. Even the fishermen lend hands, partly out of self-interest, partly because everyone loves a project that might save the ale. By midnight, the first pond fills, water swirling with a galaxy of soap flakes before slipping through a stone spillway to the next. You drop a torch to see. Bubbles catch orange light like miniature lanterns drifting down. It's beautiful in a way only utilitarian things can be. Next morning brings a delegation of town elders armed with ledgers and skeptical eyebrows. They question the legality of altering river flow. Godfrey, always ready to grease gears with gold and wit, offers them complimentary stout, clarified by the very ponds you fret about. They accept, spluttering as the strong brew charmed them into handshakes. Permit granted by lunchtime. River bureaucracy proves no match for malty persuasion. Yet another message arrives, this time by pigeon, feathers marked in blue dye, so you know it's from the capital. The Queen herself seeks Twin River to mastermind furnishings for her summer progress. Wall hangings large as ship sails, required spotless and fragrant with imported frankincense. Deadline 5 weeks. Payment, a royal crest to adorn guild banners, plus enough silver to retire every washboard twice over. Elation bursts like soap bubbles. Panic follows. 5 weeks to launder, repair, and scent cloth heavier than sheep herds? You'll need more manpower than the river has minnows. Clara proposes recruiting day workers from hamlets upstream in exchange for fair wages and a share of leftover frankincense resin. You dispatch Pintle and Oswin on horseback with hire letters. They ride off cheering like knighthood candidates. Meanwhile, you blueprint a schedule that reads like siege warfare. Week 1, collection and triage. Week 2, mending and fulling. Week 3, first wash in river water, second wash in rain catch vats. Week 4, sun bleach on hillside, followed by incense smokehouse treatment. Week 5, final press, fold, pack. No holidays, minimal sleeping, plenty of stout. Day workers arrive. Farmers in between plow cycles, shepherdesses quick with needles, even 2 retired soldiers looking for honest coin. You teach them the swirl and beat technique, the rabbit ear fold for storing tapestries without creasing, and the difference between soap ash that lifts grime and ash that eats holes. The courtyard transforms into a living loom of bodies choreographed around vats, lines, and tables. Someone starts singing a bawdy shanty about laundry mucking up a love affair. Soon the entire crew echoes the chorus, laughter rising with steam. Yet cloth, this ancient, doesn't crave water alone. Some sections are beetle-eaten, others stiff with candle soot. Agnes leads a rescue unit, stitching invisible patches from silk remnants. She invents a shadow leaf pattern, matching weave direction so the repair hides like a leaf's underside. It becomes guild lore overnight. Shadow leaf it. Apprentices whisper proudly as they vanish another hole. You'd think 5 weeks disappear in such fevered rhythm. But time stretches rubber-like when tasks multiply faster than soap bubbles. There's always another kettle to stir, another line to tighten before wind steals linens into brambles, another ledger to balance so wages flow on schedule. Marjorie posts daily tallies, and when a storm gust scrambles numbers, she recalculates from memory, swears she sees digits hovering in steam. Mid-project slump hits during the 3rd week moon. Workers slow, laughter thins, knuckles split from lye burns despite ash salve. You crack the Saint Rain vial on an impulse born of desperation. Drizzle its contents into the master vat while everyone watches, half amused, half hopeful. A faint, unfamiliar scent blooms, like petrichor tangled with rosemary. Suds glow faintly under lantern light. The tired crew inhales, sighs, picks paddles back up. Whether miracle or placebo, spirits lift. By week 4, bleach fields sprawl across hillsides like captured daylight. Cloth rests on grass sprinkled with lye oil mixture that the sun will alchemize into whiteness. You station lookouts against sudden rain. A crow's caw becomes alarm call to roll up fabric fast. Kids from the village volunteer to chase birds off, payment being hard candies soaked in honey water. Frankincense for scenting arrives by mule caravan, resin tears glinting amber. A smokehouse is erected from old wine barrels, chimneys rigged to funnel aroma through layers of cloth. The first trial run smells like Solomon's temple collided with a bakery, sweet, spicy, almost holy. Workers emerge misty-eyed, whether from smoke or awe, unclear. At last, completed hangings lie folded in the new brick dye shed, edges kissing each other like sleepy giants. Guild seals stamped, charter crest embroidered top center, 2 crossed fox pegs under a crown. Pintle presents his newly carved 3rd peg, maple this time, grain shimmering, tradition upheld. You load wagons at dawn, 6 horses with bells to warn foot traffic. Town turns out to watch departure. Fishermen saluting with oars, brewers waving mugs, convent sisters flinging petals. Clara rides point like a general. You guard rear with ledger tucked under arm, every groat accounted for. Road to capital winds through wheat fields humming with bees. At each inn you requisition extra stable space. Hangings must not crease. Oswin entertains locals with tales of the river that runs on soap and songs. Tips cover meals.
4 days later, city gates rise tower tall. Banners flutter, trumpets announce processions you're not part of, yet your convoy draws stares. Palace stewards inspect cargo, whistle low, then fret over ventilation and security. They usher you to a marble-floored hall where sunlight hits mosaics like broken jewels. You try not to drip river mud on the queen's tiles. Audience is brief. Her Majesty appears wrapped in velvet darker than night's last thought. She trails perfumed wind. She inspects one tapestry corner, smiles as frankincense lingers in air, and nods. Payment chest arrives, silver stacked like mooncakes. She adds a ring, sapphire set in twisted gold. For ingenuity, she says, eyes twinkling. You bow, heart pounding louder than fulling wheel back home. Return track feels lighter despite coin weight. But challenges don't wait. Near the last ridge before home, you spy smoke. Not cook fire, but heavy gray. Urgency kicks spurs, caravan gallops. Cresting hill, you see guild yard ablaze. Dye shed chimney belching sparks, flames licking thatch roofing of adjacent loft. Workers form bucket line from river, but wind roars. Someone screams that storeroom of madder root might catch, unleashing inferno of crimson dye and toxic fumes. You dump coin chest under wagon seat, leap off, join bucket relay. Water arcs through smoky twilight. Steam hisses where it meets fire. Agnes leads crew atop roof, hacking burning thatch with wet blankets. Clara organizes toolaments to drag barrels away. Godfrey appears, having smelled smoke all the way from brewery, rolls kegs of stout to douse embers, ale baptism. Hours teeter by. Finally, flames subside, leaving charred timbers glowing like dragon teeth. Losses? Part of the new dye shed roof, some woad stock, and a few lines of cloth scorched but salvageable. Cause? A stray spark from the smokehouse chimney, caught in a gust while no one watched. You taste guilt like ash. But dawn shows resilience sprouting, Workers already salvage bricks. Apprentices sketch plans for a stone-tiled roof this time, firebreak DAP included. Queen's payment will fund rebuild. Spirits rise. Fox pegs still cross on notice board, unburned. You collapse on riverbank, feet in water cooling blistered ankles. Pintle plops beside you, holds up a sooty pebble shaped uncannily like a heart. He jokes it's the river gifting you a reminder. Fire may scorch, but water remains. You laugh, tired beyond dreams. Evening brings a modest feast of bread, cheese, and stew seasoned with smoke of victory, as Tib claims. Clara proposes a new annual tradition, River Blessing Day, to honor both flames survived and waters that save. All agree. Plans include floating lanterns, dye-drip art, and songs that rhyme lie with life. Before turning in, you walk the river path alone, full moon guiding. Water whispers against stones, carrying stories downstream. Plague-cleansed sheets, settling ponds, queen's tapestries, fires dance, fox pegs yet to be carved. You realize the river truly is the guild spine. Bend it, and every limb feels the ache. You vow to protect it as fiercely as any knight guards castle walls. But dawn will carry new rumors. Perhaps the Fishermen's Guild wants compensation for night-long lanterns disturbing eel runs. Maybe the abbess writes that plague is quelled, credits juniper ash. Maybe royal demand escalates, curtains for winter palace. Troubles never rinse away entirely. For now, though, the sky lightens, casting linen-colored glow on water surface. You breathe deep, scent of frankincense still clinging to hair. Another cycle complete, another beginning already soaking in the vat of tomorrow. Soft gray pre-dawn mist clings to the river like a shy blanket, muffling the clank of wagon axles and the squeak of overworked pulleys. Lanterns bob along the bank, each glow reflected twice, once in water, once in the eyes of every soul who rose before the cock this river-blessing morning. You tighten your cloak against the chill and step straight into the hum of last-minute preparations. No speeches, no countdown, just the living engine of the guild already turning over. Tall poles sprout along the quay, crossbeams ready for lantern chains woven from spare skeins of flax. Oswin balances on a milk stool, hitching the first string of glass jars while humming the rabbit ear fold tune out of habit. Below him, Marjorie orchestrates barrels of river clay pigment, determined to paint a mural on water itself. Swirls of indigo and rust dancing as dye dissolves downstream. She calls for more ash buckets. Apprentices dash like startled swans. A low whistle cuts through bustle. Clara strides out of the rebuilt dye shed, hands on hips, appraising her freshly laid stone roof, each slate glinting wet in the dawn. She catches your eye, offers a nod that carries the weight of a signed treaty. The guild is still standing, and so are you. Yesterday she hinted at taking a step back once festivities pass, letting new blood helm the tide. The thought still ricochets in your chest, equal parts pride and dread. Before reflection can root, the fisherman's delegation arrives. 3 sturdy figures, boots dripping with eel sludge, clutching baskets swaddled in damp reed mats. The leader, Old Bram, beard braided with copper hooks, clears his throat and presents the guild with a peace offering, 12 live eels destined for the celebratory stew. "Consider 'em borrowed river muscle," he says. "May the water feed us both." Clara accepts, ceremonious as ever, but it's your handshake that seals the compromise forged over weeks of soothed tempers and shared stout. Noon lurks behind slate clouds when thunder thuds over distant hills. A storm didn't RSVP to River Blessing Day, but clouds don't heed invitations. Pintle emerges from the lumberyard holding his newest fox peg, oak this time, carved with a swirl mimicking river eddies. He plants it atop a post near the settling ponds, a quiet promise the water won't leave its course today. Overhead, wind flips bunting like startled doves. Just when you think the sky might crack open, a herald gallops in wearing the capital's livery, mud splattering his blue silk chouses. He slides off the horse, kneecaps quivering, and looses a scroll sealed with the Queen's crest. Breathless words tumble out. Her Majesty intends to pass through the valley tomorrow on her return to court. Unplanned, incognito, curious. She wishes to witness the fabled river blessing firsthand, and she'll arrive with a retinue and enough laundry to sample the guild's process in the wild. A gasp ripples through gathered workers, followed by a rustle of checklists materializing in dozens of minds. You intercept the scroll, read the flourish of royal ink, and feel the timeline contract to the width of a wet thread. One night to upgrade a folk festival into a spectacle worthy of monarchy. One night to rehearse, scrub, stoke, bake, and pray the sky behaves. Clara claps your shoulder. You asked for tide leadership, here's the flood. She grins like someone who's dodged enough arrows to grow fond of the whistle. Command hum slips over you like a well-worn apron. First order, relocate lantern chains farther from the river's center. You'll need space for a floating demonstration raft. Agnes sketches its platform on the backside of a purchase ledger. Oak planks lashed atop barrels, washboard stand center stage, a smokehouse brazier at stern for instant frankincense infusions. Oswin and Tib bolt toward the carpentry shed to raid nails, singing a triumphant jig about floating soap operas. Second order. Contingency for rain. Godfrey opens brewery lofts to shelter spectators, pledging warm stout spiked with honey to anyone dripping onto his floorboards. You assign apprentices as umbrella sentinels, armed with linen awnings stretched over willow frames. Makeshift but graceful, like mobile sails. Hours blur. Hammers punctuate air. Dye pots simmer for river mural encore. And somewhere, marginally sane people would be sitting down to supper. Here, bread is chewed between nail clenches, cheese nibbled while balancing on rafters, and time measured by lanterns lit. At dusk, the storm finally makes its play. Wind lashes sheets drying on hillside lines, ripping too free. They cartwheel across field like ghosts gone AWOL. You sprint after them with Marjorie, laughing in madness as lightning backlights your chase. She snags one corner, you the other, and together you wrestle the linen into submission, anchoring it beneath a wheelbarrow full of stones. When you return, you find Pintle knee-deep in the settling pond, redirecting overflow with a spade as rain pounds the surface into silver static. He grunts that upstream runoff is breaching the berm. Without relief, silt and soap foam will spill straight to Fisherman's Cove, undoing months of diplomacy and tomorrow's festival in one muddy swoop. Emergency Council assembles under the willow where it all began. Lanterns sway, casting noir shadows. Plan forms. Open the old sluice gate at the abandoned mill race. Divert storm surge behind the ridge meadow where it can flood harmlessly among reeds. Downside? The gate's gears seized years ago. Someone must wade into brackish buildup, hammer pins loose, and haul the crank. You volunteer before doubts surface. Pintle and one retired soldier insist on backing you. Armed with crowbars, rope, and determination bordering on stupidity, you slog upstream in pelting rain. Storm turns the river into a shivering serpent, scales of lightning racing its spine. The mill sits crooked, roof caved on one side, but sluice mechanism endures, caked in rust, creaking like an old sailor's knees. You wedge the crowbar against the locking pin. Pintle drives a mallet. Sparks spit, pin pops. Soldier braces the wheel while you lean your full weight, muscles screaming. With a groan like an ox waking from winter, the gate yawns. Water explodes through, roaring into the meadow beyond. Seconds later, flow at ponds drops to manageable churn. Back at the yard, relief palpable. Rain tapers to drizzle as if appeased by your offering. Workers cheer, some too exhausted to raise arms, but their eyes shine. Clara wraps you in a sodden embrace, laughter mixing with thunder's retreat. River keeps testing you, she whispers. You keep passing. Night deepens. Tasks remain. Lanterns to relight. Canopy cloth to dry. Queen's welcome speech to draft, without sounding like you're groveling, yet also groveling just enough. Marjorie brews nettle tea thick as courage. Agnes stitches a last-minute fox peg emblem on your cloak. Leadership marker, she claims, is good for visibility and scaring bureaucrats. Just before dawn glow tinges clouds, you steal a moment on the demonstration raft, drifting near the bank. Mist curls around barrel edges, ghosting lantern reflections so they seem to hang in air. You dip fingers into water, cold, alive, humming with yesterday's storm secrets, and marvel how this same current once threatened plague, then fire, then flood, and still slides onward, patient as eternity. Hoofbeats announce royal arrival mid-morning. Not a trumpet in earshot. Her Majesty true to her incognito vow. But polished saddles and embroidered riding cloaks scream nobility louder than brass. She dismounts gracefully, cloak hem flicking dew. Court ladies bustle, curious eyes cataloging every bucket and rope. You bow, offer practiced greeting, sense mud squelching beneath boots you forgot to polish. Too late. Ceremony unfolds briskly. Clara presents fox-peg staff as symbol of guild service. Queen accepts, admires carving, plants it beside the one Pintle set yesterday, dual guardians. She then requests to witness full process with minimal choreography. Translation, no fussy pageant, just honest labor. You lead retinue onto raft. Agnes and Marjorie demonstrate stain lifting with horsehair brushes, explaining juniper ashes alchemy. Pintle works the paddle wheel powering wash arm. Water slaps cloth rhythmically, echoing off cove walls. Royals lean closer, intrigued by river mural now revived in brighter sun. The pigments form swirling map of tributaries and cloth lore runes. A lady-in-waiting breathes, "It lives." The queen steps forward, dips fingertips into sudsy river, lifts them to nose. A smile glimmers. She thanks you not in royal plural, but simple singular. Good, she says. Honest. Needed. Court scribes jot furiously. Bards already humming new ballads. Festival blossoms behind them. Fishermen serve smoked eel stew. Brewers hand out honey stout. Children chase dyed ribbons tumbling in breeze. The river, for once, flows quiet, as though pausing to watch its own birthday party. Afternoon sunlight filters through willows, stippling the crowd when a nun from the hill convent appears, bearing a letter and a loaf of cedar honey bread. Plague has ebbed. Sisters credit clean linens and water miracles. They name you honorary steward of their washhouse if ever you seek contemplative retirement. The offer feels distant but warm.
As shadows lengthen, the queen prepares to depart. She confers privately with Clara, then, to your astonishment, turns to you, producing a slim leather-bound ledger embossed with silver waves. A royal patent, she explains, granting Twin River Guild sole authority to establish training houses along every tributary of my realm. Share your craft, protect the waters. Thunderstruck silence follows until Pintle hoops loud enough for 3 valleys. Once royal entourage disappears in cloud of dust, jubilation erupts. Godfrey taps a celebratory keg. Oswin strums lute chords that refuse to stay in key. And lanterns ignite one by one, though sun hasn't set, eager for encore. Clara climbs a crate, calls for quiet. Her voice wavers only slightly as she announces her retirement to advisory seat, ceding Master of River Pegs, not to Pintle or Marjorie, but to you. A hush, then roaring applause. You feel every heartbeat inside your skull, but somehow feet stay rooted.
First act as master. Dedicate the new patent to the river itself. You wade knee-deep, hold ledger open to the sky, and vow aloud that every branch and brook will learn balance of soap and salmon, ash and eel, cloth and current. Crowd echoes, so be it, voice weaving with ripples.
Night blankets festival in velvet blue. Lanterns drift downstream, each carrying scrap of linen inked with personal wishes. Forgiveness, fortune, fewer blisters. You release your own. Blank save a tiny sketch of a fox peg and 3 simple words. Flow, never flee. Marjorie finds you later on the quiet bank. She presses a small parcel into your palm, the vial of Saint Rainwater, now empty save a bead clinging to glass. "It's yours," she says. "Fill it with tomorrow." She walks away before you can argue. You look up at the moon mirrored on the soot-cleansed pond, listen to festival music thinning with distance, and realize the story you set out to tell, the one about why medieval laundry took an entire river, has grown into something bigger, a testament to how rivers take entire peoples, mold them into communities that haul, soak, mend, and rebuild together. Somewhere upstream, a settling gate creaks. Downstream, a fisherman laughs. And overhead, a late lantern bursts into view, its flame spelling the final punctuation of the night. You exhale, letting water lap your boots, and feel the current tug gently. Onward, always onward, toward tributaries yet unsung. Sleep will come soon, heavy as wet wool, but not before one last thought floats by. Tomorrow's wash waits already. And now, thanks to charters, fox pegs, and the stubborn courage of every hand that braved lie burns and lightning, you won't be scrubbing alone. Story complete. River steady. Lanterns fading. May your own dreams tonight glide as smoothly as linen on sun-warmed stones.